All right, everybody, welcome back to the channel. Thank you guys for joining in today. Wanted to add a new video to the JMRI series, mostly because it's been a while. Didn't want all my JMRI people to forget about the content that we have there. But also wanted to talk about something that I haven't really seen many other people talk about. Now, to be fair, that does not mean that no one has thought of this idea. But, you know, I do talk to quite a few people, and I love to talk about JMRI, and I haven't really heard a lot of people think of this. So maybe, just maybe, this is a brand new idea. Stay tuned. All right, so here's what we have. This is a plan that I came up with to use JMRI to run multiple people's layouts and have them interchange with one another. And to be fair, I'm sure several people have thought of this. I do know that this was, at least in my mind, as a response to the fact that Trainz multiplayer is really clunky and frustrating. Plus, also, I wanted to be able to use some third-party content that I had purchased or that my friends had purchased. You know, just to be able to have and use some of that too. So the limitation was we had to have our own routes, and then we would use JMRI to route all the cars to the different industries. So the way that I decided to set this up was we would each build our layout. So here is one of the layouts. The setting is the late 40s for the New York Central. And so this is one of the staging yards at the end of the layout. This one has a loop because this staging yard does not connect to anybody else's layout. And so here it's only got 2 trains right now. There'll be more added later. But from there it runs, and then one of the first places that you get to is the main divisional yard. So each one of our layouts has like a main divisional yard. And this is kind of like the only place where we accept any trains that come from another person's layout. So they'll build a train here, they'll run it off to the yard on the other end of the layout, and that's like the connection to my route, for example. And then when it connects to my route, I pick it up and I run it to my divisional yard where it gets broken down and put on locals that run on my layout. So kind of the idea is you have just a couple of trains that actually interchange between the layouts, and then you have several locals and different trains that run on your own layout. And so that way, you know, you have some time and some trains to run, and you only have to actually complete the interchange one time. So you can do this with iPortals if you'd like. I personally don't like iPortals, so I don't use them. If people really wanted to do iPortals, I could be talked into it, but personally I like to just download the consist as a CDP and email the CDP to the person. And we've kind of agreed on like a common set of assets for like boxcars and flat cars and locomotives and all that stuff. That way we all have the same files and we don't have to worry about unknown assets or anything like that. So this is just kind of how they've set their layout up. This is what I call the operational details only. So we don't have any real scenery. We just have all the operating details, meaning the track plan, the spurs, the track marks, all that kind of stuff. So I will decorate it, you know, as time goes on. But I just haven't done it yet. Mostly just kind of doing a proof of concept right now. But the idea behind it is just to be able to not only run our own railroads and enjoy that, but also to be able to interact with each other. And whenever I, you know, build a train that gets loaded here at the cotton mill, it could be shipping the finished clothes or the cotton or whatever to any industry that's on anybody's railroad that's connected to me or to another railroad, you know. So here is a staging yard where you would send a train that goes to my railroad, for example, because this is my buddy's railroad. And on this one, it does not have a turnaround loop because the trains are going to stop. You're going to either download it as a CDP or you would use an iPortal and it will disappear off your route. So you don't need to have a turnaround because it's going to get placed. Since I like to use CDPs, I will just place it there. We do register all the car numbers. I did check, and it seems like downloading it as a CDP will actually save the car numbers. So I thought that was really cool. But yeah, so this is one layout. Let me briefly show you the other one. I'll see you guys in just a second. All right, here is the other layout. This is the connecting staging yard. So this is where we would ship trains to our buddy from the other layout, or we would receive as well. This layout actually is going to get reworked. I don't really like the plan here, so I'm going to do a lot of changing. But as you run around here, this is a connection to another person's railroad. I designed this as like an NKP, a nickel plate connection. But, you know, I could make it still a New York Central connection. It depends on whoever wants to connect up and which railroad they want to model. And then as you travel around, of course, this gets to the divisional yard. This is another thing that I'm going to be reworking. I just don't like the structure. I feel like I could have done a much better job, so I'm going to go back and do a much better job. And then, of course, you continue traveling around to some areas where you do some switching, you run some locals, all that kind of stuff. There's a place for loading up a unit coal train, so I've got some of that in there. Plus also one last town, and then a little trip around to our last staging yard. So I want to do quite a bit of refinement on this. I think I could have done a much better job. But just as an example, this is the layout I have. And so from here, we would run our locals all from the divisional yard right here. And then we would build trains that get shipped all the way around to my buddy's divisional yard. So that way, each time that we meet up every 2 weeks, we would only have to interchange 2 trains for each of us. So 4 trains total, 2 to him and 2 from him. And then that's it. That's our 4 trains. And then he would place the 2 on his layout. I'd place the 2 on mine. We would get our switch lists and off we go. So now I want to spend the last few minutes here talking about how I set this up in JMRI. All right, so here are the locations. They're not entirely done yet, but everything in the Southern Ohio sub is done. We just haven't finished placing our rail cars, but notice we have the divisions here. So we have the Southern Ohio sub is my friend's division. My division here is the Lake Erie and Eastern. We're using mostly Trainz Forge content, which is why we're doing Lake Erie and Eastern. So, you know, if we were to add more people, we could have like an NKP division. That would be like a foreign railroad that interchanges. We could also have another NYC division because I have another connection that I'm not using. But right now, these are the locations, and I have it split here by division. So you can see, you know, the towns, the divisional yard, all that kind of stuff. And then let's look at just a few things real quick. So some of this gets a little weird and it kind of has some gimmicks, but you know, if you guys were interested in learning more about how I did this, I could always go into more detail. But pretty much the max train length is 1,100 feet. You know, it is a model railroad, so we're running some shorter trains, and that's okay. But here are currently the routes I've set up. Notice I have them labeled by SOS. That is because that is on the Southern Ohio sub. And those are specifically for the trains that connect to other railroads. These other ones I did not label as SOS because they are only going to be run by that one person. I might change that later. We'll see. Doesn't really matter just now. Next up would be, let's do trains. So here you can see the trains we currently have created. These are all labeled according to their division. So all these are the SOS trains. We've got the manifest, the through train. We have the transfers, locals, all that kind of stuff. So lots of good things here. And later on, if you guys wanted, I could go into more detail about that. But really, you know, the big thing is understanding where they're running and kind of how they interact together. So this is the staging yard that we technically share. So if I'm running a train that goes to him, it's going to go to the staging yard. And if he's running a train going to me, it's also going to go to the staging yards. That's kind of how that works. But of course, naturally, we list the cars. So I've got the cars listed here, the ones that are currently there. We are using schedules, so they do have loads. We also are using priorities and hazardous loads as well. So that's all in there. And then MTY just stands for empty. That way we can route empty cars as well. There are definitely reasons for that, but you know, that's kind of the way we set it up. We do have some just default empties here. That's because they're currently sitting in staging yards. All right, and then let's see. We do still have alphanumeric codes for labeling industries. And then we are also listing our locomotives. So if I bring this over, here are the locomotives, the current train that they're sitting on, or sorry, this is the consist. That way they stay together. But then, of course, we have the horsepower, the model, the type, the length, all that kind of stuff, their location. And then, of course, we do have on each railroad, you have to have a place to hold the locomotives. So we have basically just a yard track that is limited to just, you know, holding locomotives, like a terminal track or something. So that's kind of how we set it up. But there are some ground rules that we have to agree to follow. And those ground rules kind of just deal with operating strategies and just kind of how you run your trains, you know, making sure that you follow the switch lists, making sure that you come on every 2 weeks to do the interchanges, and also just making sure that you have your layout itself complies with, you know, the expectations of having the one big divisional yard, because it gets a little too complicated to run a train from my divisional yard to any random spot on someone else's layout. So it's a lot easier if we just keep to the 2 divisional yards. I don't want to go on for too long about it and bore you guys to death, but would love to talk more if there is some interest. So please let me know. But just, you know, consider if you would like, consider how you could use this to help connect up some of your friends' railroads with your own. You could also do this with actual physical model railroads. There is a section in the JMRI operations manual that talks about, different ways that you can link up your railroad with another person's. But this is the way I kind of designed and kind of liked. So, but this is, for direct interchange, as if we're running just two divisions on the same railroad. So that's kind of was the idea here. But hope you guys liked it. Stay tuned for more stuff coming out soon. I'm going to have JMRI today. We've got a Coxswain video will come out next week talking about passenger operations. And then I've got a couple of route build videos coming up. So just adding some variation to the content. But as always, thanks again for watching and liking and sharing the videos. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't. And we will see you guys next time.